The deep ocean cities of the Zephyrian worlds glowed with soft blue and green lights that had shone for thousands of years. It's these beautiful underwater civilizations housed 3 different species who had lived together in peace for longer than most galaxies could remember. Their crystal domes protected millions of gentle beings who had never known war. But now the lights were going out one by one. Elder Velthara floated in the central command chamber, her translucent fins trembling as she watched the holographic star map. Another red dot appeared where a thriving colony had been just hours before. The Vorth had found them. Nobody knew where the Vorth came from. They appeared in space like a disease, their living ships shaped like massive jellyfish with tentacles that could wrap around entire moons. These creatures didn't want to rule or conquer, they wanted to eat. Every living thing they touched became food for their endless hunger. "Elder, the Kepler system has gone silent," reported Commander Dexani, his voice heavy with grief. "That's 12 worlds in 3 days." Velthara closed her ancient eyes. 12 worlds meant billions of lives consumed. The Vorth bioships would drain every drop of life energy from those planets, leaving behind nothing but empty rocks floating in space. "Have we heard anything from the Galactic Council?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "They've scheduled a committee meeting for next month," Dexani replied bitterly. "They want to study the situation before taking action." The Galactic Council was made up of hundreds of advanced species who had been talking about problems for millions of years. They were very good at making laws and having debates, but they moved slower than glaciers when real danger appeared. By the time they decided to help, there would be no Zephyrians left to save. Velthara looked at the emergency communication device that hadn't been used in over 3,000 years. It was an ancient piece of technology from the early days of galactic civilization, designed to send distress signals across the entire galaxy when species faced extinction.
"Activate."
"The old protocols," she commanded. "Send the beacon on all frequencies." The message was simple and desperate. "Help us, or watch us die." The signal raced across space faster than light, reaching every monitoring station in the galaxy.
"Yes."
Most species would ignore it or send it to their governments, where it would disappear into bureaucratic procedures. But the message also reached a small blue planet on the edge of known space. Captain Lee Minho sat in the Seoul Deep Space Monitoring Center, drinking his 3rd cup of coffee while watching the night shift displays. Earth's monitoring stations were considered primitive by galactic standards, but they worked well enough to keep track of what was happening in nearby space. When the Zephyrian distress call appeared on his screen, Lee read it twice to make sure he understood. The translation software was good, but alien languages could be tricky. "Lieutenant Park, come look at this," he called to his assistant. Park Jung-soo hurried over, his young face serious as he read the message. "Sir, this is a species-wide extinction event. They're asking for immediate military assistance." Lee pulled up what little information Earth had about the Zephyrians. They were peaceful ocean dwellers who had never bothered anyone. Their technology was advanced, but used only for art, science, and making their underwater cities more beautiful. They had no armies, no weapons, no way to defend themselves against something like the Vorth. "What's the Galactic Council's response?" Time, Lee asked. Park checked his computer. "Based on their previous emergency responses, at least 6 months. It's maybe longer if they decide to form a special committee." Lee felt anger rising in his chest. 6 months was a death sentence for an entire species. The Galactic Council knew this, but they would follow their procedures anyway. They cared more about their rules than about saving lives. Most galactic civilizations thought humans were primitive barbarians who had somehow learned to build spaceships. They called Earth a death world because it was so dangerous compared to their peaceful planets. Humans were violent, unpredictable, and avoided by most civilized species. But right now, being violent and unpredictable might be exactly what was needed. "Sir," Park said quietly, "we're not supposed to interfere in galactic affairs without permission from the Council." Lee stared at the distress message, thinking about millions of innocent beings dying while bureaucrats held meetings. He thought about the Zephyrian children who would never grow up, the artists who would never create another sculpture, the scientists who would never make another discovery. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We're going to help them." Park's eyes widened. Sir, we don't have authorization. The council will be furious. Let them be furious, Lee replied, already reaching for the emergency communication system. By the time they finish arguing about whether we should help, we'll have either saved the Zephyrians or died trying. The message went out to every human military base in the solar system. For the first time in their short spacefaring history, humanity was going to war, not for conquests or resources, but to save strangers they had never met. The Deathworld was about to show the galaxy what real help looked like. Admiral Kim Soo-jin stood on the bridge of the warship Incheon, watching her crew prepare for the most dangerous mission in human history. Around her ship, 26 other vessels floated in formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that most of the galaxy considered primitive but effective. The human fleet looked small compared to the massive ships used by advanced civilizations. But every vessel had been built for one purpose: fighting. Earth was a dangerous world that created dangerous people, and their ships reflected that reality. No decorative panels or comfortable living quarters, just armor, weapons, and the ability to survive in hostile space. Admiral Commander Yoon called from the navigation station. Jump coordinates are locked in. Zephyrian space, Sector 7, Alpha. Distance: 4,000 light-years. Kim nodded grimly. 4,000 light-years was farther than any human had ever traveled. They would be completely alone in unknown space, with no possibility of rescue if things went wrong. But the Zephyrians were dying right now, and every minute of delay meant more innocent lives lost. All ships report ready for jump, announced Lieutenant Commander Choi from the communications station. Fleet Captain Nam requests permission to proceed. Kim took one last look at the tactical display showing their destination. Intelligence reports suggested the Vorth had already consumed 6 Zephyrian worlds, with more falling every day. The enemy was described as a hive mind species that used living ships and treated all other life as food. Execute jump, she ordered. All ships. Hyperspace in 3.2.1. The stars stretched into lines of light as the human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving Earth's solar system behind. Across the galaxy, monitoring stations detected the jump signature and began tracking the small human fleet as it raced toward the crisis zone. Diplomatic channels exploded with activity as alien governments tried to understand what was happening. The Altarian Federation, one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, sent angry messages calling the human response reckless intervention by primitive forces. The Centauri Trade Union worried about destabilizing influences from Deathworld species. But the humans were already committed. They had made their choice to help, and no amount of diplomatic pressure would change their minds. When the fleet dropped out of hyperspace in Zephyrian space, the sight that greeted them was worse than anyone had imagined. Massive bioships, each one the size of a city, hung in orbit around dying worlds. The Vorth vessels looked like giant jellyfish made of dark meat and bone, their surfaces covered in pulsing veins that glowed with stolen life energy. "My God," whispered Commander Han from the tactical station. "Sensors show 47 large bioships and countless smaller ones," reported Lieutenant Kim. "The life readings are dropping rapidly." Admiral Kim studied the tactical display with cold eyes. The organic ships were literally draining the life force from entire worlds, leaving behind empty husks. "Floating in space?" "Assessment, Commander Han." She asked. Han's analysis was quick and brutal. "The Vorth are an existential threat, Admiral. They don't conquer territories or demand surrender. They consume everything living and move on. There's no negotiating. With a species that views us as food, communication signal came through from the surviving Zephyrian command center. Elder Valthara appeared on the main screen, her translucent form flickering with desperate hope. "Human ships, we are grateful for your arrival," she said. "But please, there must be a way to stop this without more violence. The Vorth are still living beings. Perhaps we can find a solution that doesn't require killing." Admiral Kim felt a Moment of respect for the Zephyrian leader. Even facing extinction, she still hoped for a peaceful resolution. But Kim had read the intelligence reports. The Vorth had consumed dozens of species over the centuries, leaving nothing but empty space behind them. Elder Velthara Kim replied, "We've seen what the Vorth do to other species. They don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They eat everything in their path and move on to the next meal." While the Zephyrians continued to plead for a diplomatic solution, and the Galactic Council sent messages demanding that all parties follow proper protocols, the humans began immediate combat operations. Their approach was methodical and brutal. They didn't waste time trying to understand the Vorth or find ways to communicate with them. All ships, Admiral Kim announced on the Fleet Command Channel, weapons free. Target the largest bioships. First, show them what Deathworlders do to threats. The human fleet moved into attack formation with practiced efficiency. These weren't explorers or diplomats. They were warriors from a world where everything tried to kill you. They had learned to kill back harder and faster than anything else. Commander Yoon launched the first salvo of missiles, watching as they streaked toward the nearest Vorth bioship. The weapons were simple by galactic standards, but they were designed to destroy living targets with maximum efficiency. The war for Zephyrian space had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn why other species called Earth a death world. The first human attack began at exactly 1430 Galactic Standard Time. And within minutes, the entire galaxy knew that something terrible and wonderful was happening in Zephyrian space. Captain Na's destroyer squadron moved into position around the largest Vorth bioship, a massive creature that pulsed with the stolen life energy of 3 dead worlds. "Kinetic bombardment ready," reported Weapons Officer Lee from the bridge of the Destroyer Soul, targeting the creature's main feeding organs. Captain Na watched the massive bioship through his view screen. It was beautiful in a horrible way, its translucent skin showing the flow of energy through veins thick as subway tunnels. Somewhere inside that thing were the remains of billions of Zephyrians who had been consumed to feed its growth. Fire," he ordered. The kinetic projectiles moved faster than most beings could think. Chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields. When they hit the bioship's hull, the results were devastating. The living vessel screamed across psychic frequencies, a sound that made every telepathic species in the galaxy cover their minds in horror. The projectiles tore through the creature's organic armor like bullets through paper, each impact creating massive wounds that leaked glowing fluid into space. The bioship writhed in agony, its tentacles lashing out blindly as it tried to escape the pain. "Direct hit on Neural Cluster 7, announced Lieutenant Park from the tactical station. The creature's losing coordination in its lower sections. Across the battlefield, Commander Jang's heavy cruiser Busan targeted a different bioship, one that seemed to be coordinating the smaller Vorth vessels. The humans had studied the enemy's behavior during their approach and identified what appeared to be command organisms within the swarm. "Cut off their hive mind communications," Jang ordered his weapons team. "If we can blind their commanders, the smaller ones will become confused." The Bazan's main guns fired concentrated energy beams that sliced through the command bioship's communication organs. The effect was immediate and brutal. Smaller Vorth vessels began flying in circles, their connection to the hive mind severed. By the surgical strikes, Lieutenant Shin's fighter squadron moved through the chaos like sharks through bloody water. Their small ships carried weapons that most galactic civilizations had banned centuries ago. Viral agents designed to attack organic matter at the cellular level. Deploying bioweapons, Shin reported calmly as his fighters released clouds of engineered viruses into space. Target the enemy's reproductive systems. The viral clouds spread quickly through the Vorth bioships, carried by the creature's own circulation systems. Within minutes, entire sections of the enemy fleet began to writhe and convulse as the viruses ate away at their living. Hulls from the inside. The sight was horrible to watch. The bioships didn't just die, they suffered. Their screams echoed. Across every psychic frequency, a sound of pure agony that made sensitive species across the galaxy turn away from their monitoring screens, but the humans continued their attack without hesitation. They had learned long ago that their homeworld was a place where hesitation meant death, where mercy toward predators was suicide. They fought with the controlled fury of apex predators defending their territory. Elder Velthara watched the battle. From her underwater command chamber, her translucent body flickering with conflicted emotions. The humans were saving her people, but their methods were beyond anything she had imagined. They didn't fight like the civilized species she knew. They fought like the ancient legends of her people, stories of monsters that devoured other monsters. Admiral Kim, she transmitted urgently to the human flagship. Surely there must be another way. The Vorth are still living beings. This level of destruction seems excessive. Kim's response came back immediately, her voice flat and emotionless. They chose to be parasites. We're choosing to be exterminators. The simple words sent a chill through every monitoring station in the galaxy. The humans weren't just fighting a war, they were conducting an execution. They had decided that the Vorth were too dangerous to exist, and they were systematically destroying them with weapons that prioritized effectiveness over galactic law. Commander Yoon's missile cruiser launched another salvo, its time targeting the bioship's reproductive organs. The humans had identified these as critical weak points, and they attacked them with surgical precision. Each hit prevented the creation of new Vorth, slowly reducing the enemy's ability to replace their losses. The Zephyrians, initially grateful for the rescue, began to fear their saviors as much as their enemies. The humans didn't just defeat the Vorth, they dismantled them piece by piece, their weapons carving through bioships like scalpels through flesh. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Commander Choi from the communications station, "we're receiving protests from 17 different galactic governments. They're demanding we stop using banned weapons and follow proper combat protocols." Admiral Kim studied the tactical display, watching as another Vorth bioship died in agony. Around them, the battle continued with methodical efficiency. The humans were winning, but the cost was the galaxy's opinion of them. "Tell them," Kim said quietly, "that we're not here to follow their rules. We're here to solve their problem." The storm had been unleashed. The galaxy was learning what happened when Deathworlders decided to help. The battle in Zephyrian space had lasted for 3 days. Now the tide was turning. Broken bioships drifted through the void like dying whales, their organic hulls cracked and bleeding luminescent fluid. The Vorth swarm that had seemed unstoppable was now retreating. But the humans weren't finished with them. Commander Rue stood in the science lab aboard the cruiser Daegu, studying the data his team had collected from captured Vorth tissue samples. His scientists had worked without sleep for 48 hours, analyzing the enemy's biology to find their ultimate weakness. "Sir," reported Dr. Song, her face pale with exhaustion, "we've identified the Vorth reproductive cycle. They don't breed like normal species. They transform entire planets into spawning grounds." Rue examined the holographic display showing a Vorth breeding world. The entire planet's surface writhed with organic growth, millions of new bioships, being grown in vast nurseries that stretched across continents. It was like looking at a factory designed by nightmares. "How many breeding worlds do they have?" he asked. "Intelligence suggests 3 primary systems," answered Lieutenant On from the tactical station. "Each one capable of producing thousands of new bioships every year." The implications were terrifying. Even if the humans destroyed every Vorth in Zephyrian space, more would come from the breeding worlds. The cycle would continue until every living thing in the galaxy had been consumed. "We need to stop them permanently," Roos said quietly. "Not just defeat them, but make sure they can never threaten anyone again." His team had developed something that most civilized species would consider a war crime. It was a biological weapon, designed to target the specific genetic markers that made Vorth reproduction possible. Once deployed, it would spread through their breeding grounds like wildfire, sterilizing everything it touched. The weapon would ensure that the Vorth could never recover from their defeat. It would make them extinct. Roos sent his findings to Admiral Kim aboard the flagship Incheon. The data package included detailed scans of the breeding worlds, population estimates, and the specifications for the sterilization weapon. It was everything needed to end the Vorth threat forever. Admiral Kim studied the reports in her private quarters. feeling the weight of what her people were about to do. The weapon would work, but using it would cross a line that no galactic civilization had ever crossed before. They would be committing genocide on a scale that would horrify every advanced species in the galaxy. But the alternative was to let the Vorth recover and continue their endless hunger. How many more species would die if the humans showed mercy? "Now, sir," reported Lieutenant on over the communication system, "we've located the primary Vorth breeding worlds. 3 systems, fully infested. Each one contains billions of developing bioships." Kim's response was immediate and final. "Sterilize them all." The operation began within hours. Human ships jumped to each breeding system, their holds filled with the biological weapon that would end the Vorth forever. The planets they found were obscene, covered in writhing flesh and organic structures that pulsed with alien life. Captain Enna led the assault on the first breeding world. Watching through his view screen as the weapon spread across the planet's surface, the effect was immediate and complete. The organic growth began to wither and die, turning from healthy pink to sickly gray within minutes. "Biological weapon deployed successfully," he reported to the fleet. "The planet's reproductive systems are shutting down. No survivors detected." Second and third breeding worlds fell just as quickly. Commander Jang's task force methodically destroyed every trace of Vorth presence, ensuring that not even spores could survive to restart the cycle. The humans were thorough in their extinction, leaving nothing to chance. Meanwhile, the galaxy watched in horror as real-time reports came in from the battlefield. The humans weren't just defeating the Vorth, they were erasing them from existence. Every bioship was hunted down, every spawning ground burned clean. Every trace of their presence systematically eliminated. Diplomatic channels exploded with protests. The Altarian Federation demanded immediate explanations. The Centauri Trade Union called for sanctions against Earth. The Galactic Council scheduled emergency sessions to address what they called unprecedented aggression by primitive forces. Captain Lee sat in the Sol Command Center, reading the flood of angry messages from across the galaxy. Every major civilization was demanding answers. How dare these backward humans take such drastic action without consultation? Dare they commit genocide without permission? His response was transmitted across the galaxy on all frequencies. "You asked for help? We gave it. Next time, be more specific about your limitations." The simple words sent shockwaves through civilized space. The humans had just told the entire galaxy that they didn't care about diplomatic protocols or civilized behavior. They had a problem to solve, and they solved it in the most effective way possible. Elder Velthara floated in her command chamber, watching the last Vorth bioship burn in the void. Her people were safe, but she would never forget the cold efficiency with which their saviors had eliminated an entire species. The humans had shown them a kind of mercy that required the greatest cruelty. The uncomfortable truth began to settle. Across civilized space, the primitive Deathworlders were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. They didn't fight wars, they waged total war. They didn't seek victory, sought extinction of threats. The galaxy had learned what happened when you asked Deathworlders for help. The human expeditionary fleet began its journey home 3 days after the last Vorth bioship died in the void. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of the Inchin, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen as they approached their home system. Behind them, the Zephyrian worlds were finally safe, their ocean cities glowing with renewed life. The fleet had accomplished something that shocked the galaxy. They had completely destroyed a species that had terrorized civilized space for centuries. The Vorth, who had consumed dozens of worlds and billions of lives, were gone forever. Not defeated, not driven away, but extinct. "Admiral," reported Commander Yoon from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from Elder Velthara." The Zephyrian leader appeared on the main screen, her translucent form flickering with gratitude and something that might have been fear. "Admiral Kim, my people will never forget what you have done for us. You saved us when no one else would act." Kim nodded respectfully. "We're glad we could help, Elder. Your people deserve to live," as Velthara said quietly. "But we also witnessed something that will change us forever. We saw what true protection looks like, and the price that must sometimes be paid for it." The transmission ended. leaving the bridge in thoughtful silence. The Zephyrians had become humanity's first true allies, but they would never again be the innocent pacifists they had been before. They had learned that sometimes the greatest kindness required the greatest cruelty. Back on Earth, Captain Lee sat in the Sol Command Center watching his screens fill with incoming messages. What had started as a simple rescue mission had become something much larger. The entire galaxy was trying to understand what had just happened. Park reported, his voice filled with amazement. We're receiving over 300 requests for formal diplomatic contact. The Altarian Federation is offering trade agreements. The Centauri Union wants defense contracts, and the Hegemony is requesting immediate audience. Lee studied the flood of communications. Every major power in the galaxy suddenly wanted to be friends with the primitive humans. The same civilizations that had ignored Earth for decades were now desperate to establish relationships. The Galactic Council is demanding a full explanation of our actions, Park continued. They want to know by what authority we intervened without their permission. Lee almost smiled. The Galactic Council had spent months debating while the Zephyrians died, and now they wanted to lecture the humans about proper procedures. The irony was almost funny. Standard response to all, he decided. We'll consider their proposals. Eventually. But the official diplomatic channels weren't the only ones carrying messages. Deep in space, other threatened species began reaching out to Earth through encrypted channels. Their communications hidden from the major powers who had failed to protect them. The Morvani Collective sent desperate pleas for help against the Crimson Tide plague that was consuming their worlds. The ethereal kingdoms begged for assistance against mechanical harvesters that turned their people into spare parts. The Harmony clusters faced extinction from reality-warping parasites that their peaceful nature couldn't combat. Each message was the same. Help us, because no one else will. Lieutenant Commander Choi brought the encrypted communications to Captain Lee's attention. Sir, we're receiving distress calls from 17 different species. All of them are facing extinction-level threats, and all of them say the Galactic Council has been too slow to respond. Lee read through the messages, feeling the weight of what humanity had become. They had saved one species, and now every threatened civilization in the galaxy was looking to them for protection. File them all, he ordered. We'll evaluate each case and respond as we see fit. The galaxy's predators had taken notice too. The Shadow Moss Syndicate, which had been planning to enslave the Tau Ceti colonies, quietly abandoned their plans. The Devourer cult, known for sacrificing entire worlds to their dark gods, retreated to the Outer Rim. The Crimson Fleet, pirates who had terrorized trade routes for centuries, suddenly found legitimate employment. They had all learned the same lesson: mess with the innocent, and face the wrath of those who called the deadliest world in the galaxy. Commander Yoon sat in her quarters aboard the Incheon, writing the final mission report. The document would become part of galactic history, the first record of humanity's emergence as a protective force. Mission accomplished, she wrote. Threat neutralized. No human casualties. Zephyrian species secured, ready for next assignment. The simple words carried enormous weight. The age of galactic bullies was over. Species could no longer commit genocide while bureaucrats held meetings. Somewhere among the stars, the Deathworlder fleet stood ready to respond to the next cry for help. Earth's monitoring stations continued their watch, scanning the galaxy for signs of trouble. The humans had learned that with great power came great responsibility, and they had chosen to use their power to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The galaxy would never be the same. The primitive Deathworlders had become its guardians, and every civilization would have to adjust to this new reality. The age of human protection had begun.